SPLM-IO has refuted President Salva Kiir's remarks to AU that the party has promoted all its forces to higher ranks, hindering the graduation of the unified forces. An environmentalist has suggested the relocation of communities living near the oil fields after documenting high prevalence of oil pollution-related disease among local populations. And the Commissioner of Uror County in Jonglei State says a cattle-related violence in the area left 2 people dead over the weekend. These stories and more coming to you in this news bulletin with me, Yar Ajak Deng, and now the news in detail. The SPLM-IO has refuted President Salva Kiir's remarks to AU that the party has promoted all its forces to higher ranks, hindering the graduation of the unified forces. During a meeting on Friday, President Kiir reportedly told AU the unified forces have been trained and ready for the graduation, but the opposition forces, including SPLM-IO and SOA, promoted all their soldiers to officers. According to President Kiir, this is hindering the formation of a command structure and gradation of the forces. Kiir's statement to AU came barely a week after the presidency resolved to graduate the first batch of the unified forces and after formation of the command structure. Prior to AU visit, the presidency had given the Joint Defense Board a week to verify more than 50,000 screened joint forces before graduation. However, the spokesperson in the office of the first vice president rejected Kiir's claims, saying SPLM-IO has not promoted its soldiers to higher ranks. Puakubok attributed the delay to graduate the unified forces to the lack of political will from the SPLM-IG.
The president pointed out that the IO has more generals. This is not true. And according to the report of the JDB, that they have finished all the screening based on the military formation, starting from squad upward. So the graduation of the forces, of the unified forces, is not relying on the arrangement of the screening of the forces only. First, we should have agreed on the unified command of these forces. Secondly, is the parliament has to pass the security laws, because these laws, they are the one who will regulate the work of these forces. Mainly two factors behind the delayment, and that all will come to the lack of the political will from the President Salva Kiir party.
That was Puakubok, the spokesperson in the office of the first vice president, speaking to iRadio this morning. An environmentalist has suggested that the relocation of communities living near the oil fields after documenting high prevalence of oil pollution-related disease among local populations. In March 2019, Niall Tit Mamir and 4 other members from the Sud Institute conducted a research at Block 3 and 7 located in Greater Melut area. The research covered issues related to exposure to petroleum pollutions with focus on resources, water, food, location of farms and pastures, as well as settlement around to oil wells. Among the findings, researcher Niall Tit Mamir said there is a high prevalence of diseases among inhabitants living near the oil fields.
People are highly dissatisfied with the quality of the environment. All the participants, namely local government officials, chiefs, elders, women leaders, and youth representatives, affirmed their statements that the environment and its components of air, water, and soil in the area are contaminated by the oil production. We also found high prevalence of diseases. Communities unanimously complain of high prevalence of petroleum pollution diseases and reproductive health issues, including birth defects, infertility, stillbirths, miscarriages, among others. There were 13 cases. Based on the interview we did, because we did not do a household survey, of course, the number could have been higher.
Nyal Tit Mamir now recommends that the locals be relocated to safer places or else the exploration areas be fenced off to prevent accessibility by humans and livestock.
Based on what we found there, and this should apply to all the oil fields actually, swift assessment and identification of areas within a considerable distance from the oil fields where basic facilities or basic services infrastructure can be built to which residents can be relocated away from the oil fields. We think this should be a priority, by the way, and this is something that is doable. People should not continue there because it's not safe for them, and it's also not good for the industry because down the road they will get frustrated and they will start blocking the companies. So this should be prioritized.
Reacting to the findings, the South Sudan Petroleum Minister Puat Kang says relocation of civil population is not possible. He explains why.
Relocation of the whole community is not very feasible, simply because some of the areas where they are today, they are highlands. Some are lowland, which there are no operation in them. If we look at what we are being told, that the flooding may take the next 5 years, then basically you will relocate communities to these swampy areas where they will not even be able to live in. So I think we need to look at it differently. Fencing, you will only fence off. You can do the contaminated soil, the produced water, and the wells. You will be able to fence them off. But once flood comes, you will not be able to fence off the flood.
In October last year, the Ministry of Environment and Forestry promised to respond to looming environmental pollution concerns in the oil fields worsened by recent flash floods. There have been several concerns raised by authorities in the oil-producing states of possible ecological contamination, as some of the grounds are still already submerged by the devastating floods. You are listening to iReady Afternoon News. The Commissioner of Uror County in Jonglei State says a cattle-related violence in the area left 2 people dead and 4 others wounded over the weekend. Tang Chatim identified the deceased as Machot Gatwich Yak and Majok Lang Mointat. Those injured are Majak Lith Malwal, Makwe Kun Wol, Manyang Tut Majok, and Deng Bol Kwanen. Chatim said the fighting ensued after a group of armed youth from a neighboring area attacked we call Pamai Payam on Sunday. He spoke to our radio this morning from Muro town.
The youth came and attacked our area in the area called Pamai, and this attack was killed 2 people and 4 people have been wounded and 384 have been ready. This is the incident happened, and our youth still follow the footmarks of this criminal and the cattle, and they are not yet recovered. This is what I want to report to you last time. And this incident happened in the area called Pamai, we call Payam, Uror County, Jonglei State. So the situation, people are waiting for the coming of the youth. If I don't know, the youth will able to recover the cattle.
Chatim disclosed that his administration had engaged the conflicting communities in the past 2 days to cease further violence. Over the past years, Jonglei State has experienced endless waves of communal violence, mainly fueled by revenge attacks, cattle raiding, and banditry. The UN Human Rights Office in South Sudan says grave human rights violations and abuses, including hundreds of killings, were committed against civilians during the fighting in Tumbra County of Western Equatoria State last year. My colleague Lasuba Memo has a report.
In a joint report launched today, the UN Rights Agency said between June and September 2021, at least 440 civilians were killed, 18 injured, and 74 abducted during clashes between warring groups. It said at least 64 civilians were subjected to conflict-related sexual violence, among them a 13-year-old girl who was gang-raped to death. The report revealed that some 80,000 were forced to flee their homes to escape fighting. The rights agency stated that looting and destruction of property, child conscription, attacks on personnel and facilities, hate speech, and incitement to violence were among the other human rights violations the investigation uncovered. The report named members of the SPLM, SPLA-IO, and the South Sudan People's Defense Forces, SSPDF, led by Major General James Nando and their respective affiliated militias as responsible for the violations and abuses. In a statement, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Michelle Bachelet, said, and I quote, "We call on all parties to the conflict to hold to account all individuals inflicted in the killings, rape, and abductions, among other grave human rights violations. Women and children who were abducted must immediately be released and reunited with their families, and survivors provided with reparations," end quote. She said those suspected of instigating, facilitating, and aiding the violence have been identified, comprising high-ranking military officials and community and religious leaders. Bachelet added allegations against those individuals must promptly, thoroughly, and independently investigated, and the perpetrators be brought to justice and held accountable. UNMISS and the UN Human Rights Office urged the government of South Sudan to investigate and prosecute those responsible, including individuals in positions of command and authority. Following the initial clashes, the mission brought up top-level government officials in Juba and Western Equatoria together to address the violence. UNMISS deployed 21 rotations of military, police, and civilian personnel in Tombra and enabled humanitarians to conduct assessments and deliver relief to thousands of internally displaced people. The mission also set up a temporary operating base so peacekeepers could respond at short notice to provide protection and deter violence. UN body says sustainable peace is only possible if gross violations of human rights that occur during conflict are addressed through justice, truth, reconciliation, healing, compensation, and reparations. Bachelet said the perpetrators of such brutal violence against the men, women, and children of South Sudan cannot be left to benefit from impunity. Accountability is critical to deter violence.
Thank you, Lasuba Memo, for that report. The governor of Eastern Equatoria State has called on the national government to intervene in the conflict between farmers and herders in Magui County. Luis Lobong condemned the Sunday's violence, which led to loss of lives and destruction of property in the area. He appealed to both Magui farmers and cattle keepers there to find peaceful solutions to the crisis. Lobong also demanded that the herders leave the farming communities in the area. Lobong called on the national government to quickly intervene before the conflict escalates out of proportion.
I call on the national government to quickly intervene before this conflict escalates out of proportion. As a government, we strongly condemn the acts of violence, the destruction of farms, and displacement of the native population. We call for respect for the host community, their homes, their farms, and their culture. On the same notes, we call upon the host community and the entire citizen of Eastern Equatoria not to use violence in addressing their grievances.
Lobong revealed that the state government is dispatching a fact-finding committee to Magui to establish the actual situation on the ground. Lobong further called on humanitarian agencies to urgently provide assistance to the people who have been displaced by the incidents. And finally, before the international news, foreign nationals have complained of extreme right abuses, unsafe work conditions, and demand government actions. According to the International Organization of Migration, human rights violation against migrants can include a denial of civil and political rights, such as arbitrary detention, torture, or lack of due process, as well as economic, social, and cultural rights such as the rights to health, housing, or education. South Sudan hosts thousands of migrants, estimated to be more than 845,000 in 2017. Speaking to iRadio at the weekend, some of them said illegal arrest, detention, and harassment by security forces are some of the abuses they often face in the country. They complain of the unprofessionalism of some immigration officials at the country's entry points. Others accuse the Juba City Council for levying different and exorbitant taxes on them compared to South Sudanese business people. These, they say, have forced most of their businesses to shut down, with little hope to revive. They now appeal to government to intervene. Some of them who spoke to iRadio over the weekend during a cultural event in Juba to raise awareness on migrant workers, social labor, and human rights in South Sudan.
One major challenge that is a menace to us is the issue with the immigration, the way they handle foreigners. Whenever they find out that maybe you don't have proper documentation, maybe your passport is not valid or something like that, the way they apprehend us, the way they handle us, it's not good. Even the way sometimes they take us to the cells, the police cells, and they mix both men and women in the same cell.
Challenges that we always get as a migrants or rather as a foreigners in South Sudan. Like in business daily activities, we have challenges like city council. Some of them, when they come in your shop, they will overcharge you, maybe because you're a migrant, or when you get currently when this thing of migration, some people will not understand you. Even if you tell them that you have left the passport at home, they will not give you that chance. You get some harassment here and there, but all in all, we thank God that we are in South Sudan and there's nothing we can do. We have to cope with that.
We have challenges we have been facing here, from migration, business, cultural behaviors. We have passed a lot, and actually we endure with what we go through. For example, in culture, we have migrant women who are married here, and they don't come back to their house to their home. After being married, they are denied access to go back to their communities and find their family back home. You have seen how the city council has been moving around and dismissing people from their places of work, exaggerating the payments of taxes and other issues like.
Our people also have some dilemmas somewhere whereby they don't have documents, but the way they are handled like slaves, like animals, beaten, tortured, mishandled. So we call upon the government, let's work together, because I myself am documented, but one of my Ugandan who is not documented might have come with some skills. And of course, the country will benefit that knowledge.
For her part, the representative of Human Rights Trafficking Network of South Sudan, Grace Erong, said there is need to address the challenges facing immigrants in the country.
Issues of trafficking is not a one-day thing, or it is not only happening within specific communities, but it's happening to all the immigrants that are coming into South Sudan, even to South Sudanese, and it's happening everywhere. And we realize that is a challenge that needs to be addressed. And so, as a network and as a national focal person, it is our duty to work together with the government task force to ensure the issues of immigrants are addressed accordingly. In terms of giving out the information to the immigrant, they need to know exactly what kind of documentation they require in order to enter the country, and what is the implication of them coming into the country without having proper documentation.
According to the 2017 International Migration Report, the majority of immigrants in the country are from the Eastern and Horn of Africa and often have an irregular immigration status. According to IOM, South Sudan is not only a country of destination for many migrants, it is also a major transit hub on the route of Northern Africa. Migrants move to and through South Sudan for a variety of reasons, a phenomenon IOO described as mixed migration. Groups in the country include refugees, migrant workers and their families, unaccompanied children, and victims of trafficking. Those traveling to or through the country often enlist the services of smugglers to facilitate their journey. President Salva Kiir's remarks to AU that the party has promoted all its forces to higher ranks, hindering the graduation of the unified forces. An environmentalist has suggested the relocation of communities living near the oil fields after documenting high prevalence of oil pollution-related diseases among local population. And the Commissioner of Uror County in Jonglei State says a cattle-related violence in the area left 2 people dead over the weekend. That's the end of iRadio Afternoon News. You can also get these stories and updates by subscribing to iRadio News alert on your MTN South Sudan number. Call 700**700# and follow the instructions. If there is a story or an event you would like iRadio to cover or report about, please send us a text message on +211 912 986 986. It is also our WhatsApp number. Follow us on Twitter at iRadio Juba, like our Facebook page iRadio, subscribe to our YouTube channel iRadio South Sudan, and watch our comprehensive interviews. You can also visit our website and listen to us online at www.iradio.org. Stay tuned for the news in Arabic at 1:30. I am Yar Ajak Deng. Thank you for listening.